What a wonderful tribute reel to Sam's remarkable career. Please help me welcome Sam to the stage.
Gosh. Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for that completely wonderful ovation and this completely unnecessary award. And thank you, Olivia, and thank you, Chaz, and thank you, Cameron Bailey, and thank you, TIFF. Because TIFF is where my movie career started. It was nearly a quarter of a century ago, if you can believe that. American Beauty had its first ever screening here. Yeah. It makes me feel old. And I'll never forget, genuinely never forget, being in the audience that night and feeling the audience take the movie to their hearts in the way that big, live audiences can do in a full house at a cinema. There's nothing better in the world. And that was the moment it all started, really. It seems like yesterday, but I have TIFF to thank for that moment. And there are some people here tonight who were there on that night. You know who you are, Terry and Beth, and you've been around the whole time, and I thank you for that. And the lovely thing about this event is it's not televised, so I can waffle on as long as I want. and Olivia will tell you, I like to talk, so indulge me. Because I thought I was going to reflecting about this whole event, and I thought, well, what have I learnt? Is there anything I've learnt in the 24 years since that night? And 3 stories occurred to me, 3 stories that I suppose I've thought about a number of times over the years. The first is I was making a movie called Road to Perdition with Tom Hanks and Paul Newman and Daniel Craig, Jude Law. And we were shooting on the back lot at Warner Brothers. It was a very long shoot. We'd had 80 days. It was cold. It was pretty grim. And we were right at the end, and we were shooting the scene where Michael Sullivan, played by Tom Hanks, shoots and kills his surrogate father, played by Paul Newman. And we'd been making biblical rain from rain towers, and it was freezing cold, and we'd been shooting for days. And I looked across at Paul Newman, who was soaking wet and freezing, and then I looked at Tom Hanks, who was soaking wet and freezing, and I thought, I feel guilty about this. So I went over to Tom Hanks and I said, listen, I'm really sorry, this is way longer than I thought it was going to be. I apologize. Are you okay? And he said, am I okay? He said, I'm on the Warner Brothers backlot, dressed as a gangster, shooting Paul fucking Newman. I was a fucking busboy, he said. And about 2 hours later, his driver turned up with like 5 boxes of donuts. And so the first thing I learned was gratitude. We're very, very lucky, and never forget it. And the second thing was about 10 years later, I found myself in a place I didn't expect to be, which is directing a James Bond movie. And I was on a pre-scout for Skyfall in Istanbul, and we were walking through the Grand Bazaar, as you do. And I said to somebody, is there any way of getting up onto the rooftops here? And they said, well, actually, there's one way. There's a kebab shop, and there's a hatch in the roof, and you can go up a ladder onto the roof. So myself and Roger Deakins and a couple of other people went up this ladder, and out on the roof was the most extraordinary vista. The sun was setting over Istanbul and over the Bosphorus. They were calling the faithful to prayer. It was a miraculous place. And Roger immediately, as is his way, got his still camera out and started taking photographs. And I saw my chance. I took my camera out, my phone, and I took a photo of him, and I sent it to his wife, James, and I just said, another day at the office for Roger Deakins. And she sent back a text immediately. That's Roger, she said. Just give him a camera and something to point it at, and he's happy. And I think about this story a lot. I don't know why, because perhaps all we need really, and what's most important in our work, is to point at something, just to be pointed at something. Just one thing for the day, concentrate on that one thing, and don't overcomplicate it. So you work with the best people, people like Roger and Conrad Hall, and the best actors, people like Olivia Colman, and they help you do that. It's a very busy, noisy world, and sometimes the most difficult thing is to just look at one thing at a time. And the last story that occurred to me was 10 years after that. 1917, we were shooting the last scene, and this is a scene I had planned and conceived and obsessed over, and I'd written in the script that as George Mackay, playing Schofield, goes and sits by the tree, he takes the photos of his wife and children out, and he looks at them, and it says on the back, "Come home to us." And he closes his eyes, and the sun comes out and hits him in the face. He feels the sun on his face. And they all said, "That's not going to happen. It's England, A. B, then the sun's never out. It's been pissing with rain for 3 months." But we set up the shot, and sometimes in this movie, it took 2 to 3 days to set up a single shot, and it was a 6-minute take, and it was the first take. And we moved through the field hospital with hundreds of dying soldiers, and Richard Madden came out, and we played this scene, and the scene was beautiful, and the camera was in exactly the right place, and George Mackay walked across this tall wheat field, this field of grass, and the camera was perfect. And he got to the tree, and he sat down, and the camera hooked around a tree and met him on the other side. Beautiful. And he sat down, and he took his photos out, and the camera tilted down. It was perfectly in focus. And it tilted up to his face, and the fucking sun came out. I cannot describe the feeling as a director when that happens. Apart from my marriage and the birth of my children, it's the best thing I have ever felt. And so what we learned from this is you also need a load of fucking luck. And I have been very, very lucky. It is my great good fortune to work with all those people, to be here again, and to receive this award. Thank you very much, all of you.